What's happening there? Oh, are you doing a simultaneous translation of what? I hope so. All right. All right, here's the first one. This is an easy one. How to get feedback as a tester? No question mark. Apart from annual appraisal, how should a tester seek feedback on his performance? So I want to understand how good or bad a tester I am. Okay, here's my medical assessment of this. This is a pretty good question. It does suffer from grammar problems, but it has no other big problem that I see. So this is pretty good. Just needs a few band-aids here and there. Let's fix it up. So I'm going to polish the grammar. Now, look, I'm going to turn this into American English, and I don't want to imply that American English is better than Indian English. Indian English is actually recognized as its own dialect of English. It's an honorable way to speak. But when you're asking an American what's happening, whether they tell you or not, is they're going to try to translate your question into American-style talking so that they can understand what you're saying. So I would translate this into, how can I get feedback on my performance as a tester, question mark. I want to understand how good or bad a tester I am without waiting for my annual appraisal. So this is almost the same question, just a few words changed, but it means exactly the same thing. Very straightforward situation. So this is the keyword question. I will now answer this question. There's lots of different things you can do. Talk with people you work with, of course. Don't wait till your annual appraisal to talk to people and say, hey, can I talk to you about how I'm doing? I think I'm doing a good job as a tester, but you know, I might be biased because I want people to think I'm doing a good job as a tester, but I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I think I've done this and I've done this. And what do you think, dear coworker? So I have conversations about that with people. I particularly want to talk with developers, and the thing I really want to know from developers is this. When you see my bug reports, are you happy? Do you think, oh, another bug report from James, this will be good reading? Or do you groan and go, not another bug from this guy, and then look for any excuse to say it's closed and get rid of it? I want you to respect my bug reports. Is there any feedback you can give me about that? So I don't want to wait to my annual appraisal. I'm going to find out from the developers how they feel about me long before. It also helps to practice explaining testing to yourself. A lot of times the testers that I coach, it's not that they can't explain testing to me. They can't explain it to anyone, even themselves. They can't explain testing. You're doing stuff every day and you can't even say what it is to yourself? Well, solve that problem. And that's not too hard to solve because every day you have access to yourself and you can practice. And if you're persistently confused, you can resolve that confusion by coming to someone like me, and I can work with you on that. By the way, if you come to me with a question over Skype, whatever your question is, I'm usually going to ask you, what do you think the answer should be? And then I will comment on your answer. That way, I don't just feel like you're using me as Wikipedia. I feel like I'm helping you to help yourself. So it would save me some time if you say, I have this question, here's my answer to it. What do you think? Is this a good answer? You do that a lot, Budini. You come to me with answers. You have answers already in your mind of something you go like, I think it's a bad idea, and I think it's a bad idea for this reason. I like seeing that. That's one of the reasons why I work with you a lot on Skype, is because you will frequently say to me, is this a good practice? And then you'll say, I don't think it's a good practice, and here's why. And that's good. That tells me you're trying to think it out for yourself, and that makes me want to invest in you. Also, hey, get some outside coaching. I do test coaching. There's a bunch of my colleagues that do test coaching as well. There's some female coaches. There's male coaches. I'm kind of a coach that you want to get if you want tough love. I'm a little bit less patient than some of my colleagues are, but there's some wonderful, soft, friendly coaches out there as well, and I can help you find them. Here's a new question. All right, after testing the same app for more than a week with different parameter, I feel drained out of test ideas and a bit bored. Is there any way to get new test ideas for app which I test for a long time? That, again, just has some minor wording problems. Let me just fix the wording. There we go. After testing product, same way, various ways. Here, oh, I thought I changed that. I'm sorry, I made a mistake on this. I decided not to change this to in various ways. I decided to change this to I decided that the original wording was actually okay. It is reasonable to say different parameters. So I must not have saved this before when I changed it because I thought I did make that change. I hope I'm not looking at an earlier version of this darn thing. All right, different parameters. I feel drained. All right, so that's a simple cure to the question. A little wording fixed so that the grammar's okay. Here are some of my ideas to that. Of course, complete testing is impossible. But boredom is a terrible disease. It is a dangerous, it's like being a pilot of an airplane and you keep falling asleep. Don't fall asleep. Boredom for a tester is exactly the same as falling asleep. You might as well just get drunk. I mean, boredom means your brain is not doing anything. You cannot be bored if you are intellectually stimulated. And intellectual stimulation is required for testing. You cannot actually do testing unless you are intellectually stimulated. If you find you are not stimulated, if you find you are bored, then you are no longer testing. You are a human robot. Congratulations, human robot. But if you want to earn all the money we pay you that we don't pay to actual robots, then you better get out of robot mode and get into creative thinking mode. So systematically vary that input data. I suspect when the fella said to me he was testing with different parameters, he probably didn't mean that he was systematically varying those parameters. Learn to systematically vary your combinations. And that's a skill set, of course. Try applying new tools. Bring in another tester. That always energizes me when I have another tester to work with who's sitting right next to me and I have to perform for that tester. So I'll get another tester to work with me and then later on I'll work with that tester on his stuff. We'll trade off instead of trying to work alone. I'll change the environment. I'll change my input methods. And here's another one that I think is really powerful and I'm amazed that people don't do it more often. Ask the developer to please put more bugs into your code. Because that's a big part of being awake as a tester is that you find bugs. Now you might think I'm joking. I am absolutely not joking. Let me tell you what happens in real life. You know those people who do airport security at the airport? They're looking at your bag, right? Well, almost never does it turn out that you're a terrorist. Very rarely does it turn out that you are a terrorist. Because you're not a terrorist. So that means they get really bored because they're constantly looking for people who aren't there. You know, we don't want the terrorists to attack us. Even actual terrorists who go on airplanes aren't trying to blow up the airplane these days. They're just like, I just want to go to America so I can bomb them. You know, I just want to be peaceful here. So they're not. So it's very rare that the bomb people detecting the bombs will actually find something dangerous in the luggage. Except interestingly in America there's quite a high incidence of people accidentally putting guns in their briefcases and forgetting that they had them there and then trying to go on an airplane ride. That actually happens an alarming amount of time in the United States. Well, so here's what happens in real life. In real life, the people at the Transportation Safety Administration, at least in the United States, they're not looking for terrorist bombs in the luggage. They're looking for the bomb devices that their bosses put in fake luggage. Twice a day, I heard from one of the people who works at one major American airport, twice a day, a fake bomb is put through somewhere in the system at that airport. And the guys have to find it every time. So they're really sharp because they don't want to miss the fake bomb. Because if they miss the fake bomb, citation letters of their bad conduct. That's what they really are trying to do to save their jobs, is to find the fake bombs. So that gave me an idea. Why don't we developers then put a set of fake bugs, intentional bugs, into the product, make a list of each one, and you announce to the testers, I have put 10 bugs into the product. I want you to find each one. You should be able to find each one. If you don't find them all by this moment in the project, then I will reveal to you the bug and I will remove it from the system. Of course, this only works if you aren't continuously shipping. If you're continuously shipping and you're only testing the production system, then of course you're releasing bugs to the whole world. But you might even do it even in that situation. You might just call it something else. You might, developers, maybe if I were a developer, I would release a special Easter eggs. And I would tell the customer, if you see this Easter egg, you've just won a prize. Give this code to our tech support people, and we are going to send you a t-shirt that said, I found a bug that the testers didn't find. And then we will force all the testers in our team to wear the t-shirt with your name on it that says, Joe found a bug that we didn't find, and we'll send you a picture of that, and then you will get that as your special award. And the testers will be all embarrassed that they didn't find the problem before you did. Because we want our testers to be sharp, and they want to be sharp, so we have to give them some bad software to look at. Because even though a tester shouldn't feel bad if they don't find bugs, it just means the software's good. The fact is that unlike a smoke alarm, which really doesn't feel bad when it doesn't perceive a fire for a whole year, testers, they start getting bored and they start getting loose and they lose their edge and they get depressed, and we're humans. So we need to feel like, yeah, I did it. And it's very hard to know if the software is so good. So I would develop a special bug dissemination program and see how well the testers did. And I guarantee you the testers would be really trying to find all these bugs. In fact, they'd try so hard that you wouldn't even need to put the bugs in there. You could just tell the testers, I put 20 bugs in, really. And then you can not put any bugs in. And then they'll find 20 bugs and you'll go, oh, those were the ones I put in. Thanks. And now we're getting to some difficult questions. Is there any negative test case for UI testing? No functionality should be performed. It should be related to look and feel. Well, this is not such a healthy question. This is in fair condition. It's not a terrible question. I can understand it. But it has grammar problems, it has incoherent terminology, and it's making a false distinction. So here is where, if a real tester asked me this, I would have to teach them something about testing before I answered this question. So I suppose what he means is there such a thing as a negative test case for UI testing? No functionality testing should be performed. It should be related to look and feel. But the terminology, I think, has a problem. And let me walk through what that problem is. You see, you've got to know that in any test, there are 3 parts. There have to be these 3 parts, I believe, or you cannot have a test. Now, there's more than 3 to testing, but this is the central 3 that I'm going to talk about. I would actually add one more thing. I'd say there has to be a tester, as well. But in this case, it's not relevant. So you need some way of performing the test, something that you're examining, and some way of detecting a problem. If you take any one of those things away, you don't really have a test. If you take the first thing away, all you have is sort of a test idea, a test fantasy, but you can't really make it happen. If you take the middle thing away, then you aren't looking at anything, so obviously you can't find a bug. And if you take the last thing away, you can look at all kinds of things, and nothing you ever see will be a problem. So you've got to have all 3 things to have a test. Now that's one idea. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Now we have to sort out some of the other language that is in this question, because he uses this concept of UI testing. But the thing is that user interface testing can mean several things. It's not just one thing. I define user interface testing as testing that examines the user interface, period. If you are doing testing that examines and covers the user interface, you are doing user interface testing. Now, what he's doing, though, is he's doing a particular kind of user interface testing, which is user interface testing that has a look and feel oracle. Because look and feel, that's not looking at anything, that's an oracle. You're saying, does it look good? Does it feel good? Look and feel is short for, does it look good? Does it feel good? You're talking about an oracle there, a means of detecting a problem. Which means I have to know what looks good and feels good. I have to have enough understanding of the user and of good standards for that to make sense. I'm not going to read off everyone here, but I do want to cover negative testing because mostly people don't know what negative testing means. So here's my definition of negative testing. That means testing by negating a required condition. A lot of people say, negative testing means trying to break the product. Well, you never break the product. It's already broken before it came to you. So you're not breaking the product. Oh, well, negative testing is where you're trying to find a bug. No, all testing is where you're trying to find a bug. Negative testing is when you do things that should find a bug. No, all testing is where you're trying to do. So what's negative testing? You're trying to make errors happen. Well, I think that's more like negative testing. And then we get to what the real name is. Negative means negating. That means making it go away. Negating is to say, go away. I'm taking you out. There are required conditions to make software work. These required conditions come from the programmer. The programmer says we need enough disk space. We need enough memory. We need the user to give correct data. And if they give this correct data, then I can produce the correct output. Negative testing is to take any one of those required conditions and just remove them. Oops, you don't get enough disk space. Whoops, no memory. Oh, the user gave you bad data. Now live with that if you can. And of course you're expecting that the program won't be able to do the result. It won't be able to give you the result. That's what a required condition is, a necessary condition. But you hope that it will fail gracefully. So negative testing looks at whether something fails gracefully when it cannot get what it needs. That is negative testing. And positive testing is just saying yes. Yes to every required condition. I'm only going to give it sweet, sweet data. Just the data that the programmer always dreamed of getting when he wrote this program. The data that Mama always told me would come if I wrote a good piece of software. And all the disk space of the world I shall have at my feet. And I shall have infinite memory. Everything I want as a programmer. All wishes were granted by the genie. But maybe still my product doesn't work. So we do positive testing as well as negative testing. Affirming or negating. These all interrelate with each other. So user interface coverage overlaps with function coverage. They aren't totally different, but they're not totally the same. Positive and negative can be done with either user interface coverage or function coverage. And capability oracles and look and feel oracles, they overlap a little bit too, and they overlap with these other things. All of these things interact with each other. So then the real question then is this. We replace the false distinction. And the false distinction that was there is it was saying that UI testing means that you're only evaluating look and feel. That's not true. But you can do user interface testing that only evaluates look and feel. That's what he meant to say, I believe. I believe the questioner meant to say, I'm doing user interface testing and I am using a look and feel oracle. In that case, is there any such thing as negative testing? And the answer is yes. Because you just have to ask the question, is there a required condition involved with user interfaces? Well, I don't know about user interfaces per se, but I know that, generally speaking, the product has required conditions. And if it doesn't fulfill those required conditions, it's going to give me an error handling behavior, right? I can ask the question, what is the look and feel of the error handling behavior that is triggered during negative testing? Ta-da! So yes, we can perform look and feel evaluation of the product while subjecting it to negative conditions, error conditions, and seeing error handling functionality. Does the look and feel degrade non-gracefully, or does it degrade gracefully in those situations? So that's one answer to this. I suspect there may be other ways to see negative testing and look and feel go together. This was the one I could think of, and I have not been able to think of any others. So if anyone else thinks of an example, Ajay, do you have an example? Shout it out.
If a website is supposed to meet some standards, so that's a required condition, and if the look and feel doesn't match, then there's a negative test case.
Well, the concern I have about that, if the website is supposed to meet some standards, is you may be confusing requirement with required condition. There are requirements, but that's not the same thing as required condition. Requirement is what is it your software is required to do. A required condition is the programmer saying, if you want me to fulfill those requirements, this is what I need. My program needs enough memory. My program needs enough disk space. My program needs this data to be in this format. I need all this stuff to operate correctly. When I make this call to the Google Maps API, there has to be internet access so that I can get that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to show you the map. Right? So when you say web standards, are you talking about a requirement that the developer has developed the product to meet? Or do you mean something else?
It could be something like the screen resolution, the browser size, the screen size. And if you don't meet that, then the elements overlap, and that's where the look and feel degrades.
Oh, okay. So maybe there's a platform, a requirement that says if the software runs on this kind of a platform, and so you go, okay, I'm going to negate that. I'm going to run it on the wrong platform. And we'll see, we expect it not to work in some way, but if it doesn't work in a bad way versus not working in a good, healthy way, then we have a potentially significant bug. Like for instance, if it suddenly it's an insecure application. There may be other examples, but that was the one I thought of. Now this one I have a lot of problems with. Shall I test the product or check the product? I assume that someone wrote it this way because they wanted to cause me to burst a blood vessel, and then they would hear, famous tester James Bach died today, and they'd go, my subtle torpedo question worked. I have committed the perfect crime. I assassinated someone over email. This question is in critical condition. It's missing context, it presents a false dilemma, and it uses incoherent terminology. So we have to fix this question. So let's do it. First of all, shall I do this or that? No question like that am I ever, or is any reasonable person going to ever answer directly. Because what you're really saying is, shall I always do this or always do that? Or in my project right now that I haven't described to you at all, shall I do this or that? But maybe what you mean is, under what conditions should I do this or that? Now that would actually be a reasonable question. Under what conditions, James, would you rather test the product or rather check the product? Maybe that's what you meant. And if so, that actually wouldn't be bad. But you do need to say that, because I don't know which of these things you're talking about. I'm definitely not going to answer best practice questions, because there are no best practices. Now it has a second problem in that it presents a false dilemma. It's basically saying, given that I can only do one thing and not both things, shall I test the product or check the product? But there isn't an either or in testing and checking. Testing and checking work together, as I will show you. And the key terms are being used in a nonsensical way. Here's why. If you understand what testing is, then you would say, shall I test the product, which is a process that includes checking, by the way, or shall I check the product? And that's a process that requires testing. So So why would you say this or that when one of them includes the other and the second one requires the first one? It's strange. That's like saying, should I eat or chew? What? Should I eat this food or chew it? Well, chewing is part of eating. Why would you chew it if you weren't eating it? One thing. That's one question. And chewing is part of eating, so this is a very strange question to ask. So let me go over what a check is. Check is short for output check. It is an observation linked to a decision rule, such that both the observation and the decision rule can be applied algorithmically. In other words, a machine can do it. A check can be performed by a machine, and that's why we use the word checking. And some people say it's a matter of semantics, and I say, no, it isn't, if by semantics you mean a silly distinction. This is a vital distinction that if you don't get this right, you are a reckless professional. You must know the limitations of the tools you are using. You cannot recklessly decide that, oh, a tool can do it, a human can do it, it doesn't really matter. You've got to keep this stuff straight. And this is a great sickness in our industry that management isn't keeping this straight, and testers have to start holding their feet to the fire about this. There are things machines can do, and that's great, and we should definitely do them. But let's keep it straight what the difference is between that and testing. I mean, the guy who followed me up here talking, he just kept using the word test, and he didn't seem to care. It drove me nuts. It drives me nuts. How many years do we have to go through this stuff where people are sloppily saying these words? And you can say, well, you know what I mean. And the answer is, I don't know what you mean. I really don't know when people mix these terms up. I really don't know if they know how to test or not, because they don't talk like they know how to test. So that means I just have to wait and watch you test in order to figure out if you know how to test. Wouldn't it be better if we could just be clean and logical and precise about how we use language? So I beg of you, understand the difference between what can be validated as a fact, which machines can do a lot of for us, and it is quite useful in testing, and the things that machines cannot do. So this is a relationship between testing and checking. Testing is evaluating by learning the product, learning through experimentation and exploration. It can only be done by humans. But inside of testing is this beautiful thing, checking. It's inside, it's powerful, I use it all the time, just like when I eat, I chew. But chewing and eating are not the same thing. I can have a human do checking, but humans are pretty bad at being robots. And I can have a machine do checking, or I can have a human and machine help each other do checking. It's part of testing. It's inside of testing. So here's the cured question. How do testing and checking work together? That is a good question. Not shall I do one or the other, but how do they interact? How are they distinct from each other? How are they together? And I would say that they work together. The short answer is testing creates checking. Without testing, you can't create checking. If you've ever created an automated check, then you did testing in order to do that. The process of constructing that automated checking framework, I'm not going to call it an automated testing framework. It's an automated checking framework. The process of creating that is an act of testing and test design. So when I complained and said, where's testing? You haven't talked about testing. What I was hoping that the guy would say was, but James, this is all part of testing. Let me tell you how it connects here, here, and here. Instead, what did he say? He said, oh, it's a matter of semantics. So now I'm going to go for the jugular. Every time I see him, I'm going to tease him about talking to me about telling me it's just a matter of semantics, when he could have given me a really sophisticated answer to that question and made me stop being afraid that maybe he's lost sight of testing with all of the cool tools that he's talking about. I could do a lecture on that tool and tell you how it relates to testing, We need to be able to do that when we talk about our tools. So I just kind of keep scolding him until I feel better. So testing creates checking. Testing controls checking. Testing evaluates checking. Checking informs testing. What do I get from checking as a tester? I get lots of information. My checks go out and they scan stuff and they say, this didn't give me stuff within the timeout and this did. And then the machine shows me this results and says, what do you think, tester? Because I really don't know if these are bugs or not. All I know is you gave me a rule and these things didn't meet the standard, but these things did. Maybe it's a bug. Maybe it's not a bug. I'm just a machine. I don't know. So it's time for testing. If only our machines could talk to us like that and remind us of that. So that's the short answer. Testing surrounds checking, testing supports checking, and checking drills into the product and produces huge amounts of information that testers can use to do our work. They work together very nicely. And then this one. What are the best practices to develop a regression test suite for an agile e-commerce project spanning 2 to 3 months? Oh my God. This thing has no arms. It's bleeding out of its head. This is a question that needs emergency support. It's asking for an appeal to authority. It says ambiguous terminology. And it's a self-invalidating question. A self-invalidating question is a question that should never be answered. I'll show you why. First, best practices. Don't ever ask for best practices. As soon as you ask for best practices, what you're really saying is, I don't know anything and I don't want to know anything. That's why I'm coming to you, great authority figure. I want you to just tell me what to do. I'm too stupid, just tell me what to do. I have never in my life asked for best practices. Never even when I was a little kid, I didn't ask for best practices. So I think what this person's really asking is, what are the things that the authorities of software testing say I must do? And I would say there are no authorities of software testing. Stop asking for this. Instead, ask for advice. Notice how easy this is. It's so easy. Do you have any advice about doing this? See, how hard is that? I might give you advice without having to make it a best practice, right? All right, secondly, its central term is ambiguous. So what does that mean, regression tests? To me, it can mean at least 3 different things. Maybe it's automated output checks. Maybe it's non-automated output checks. Or maybe it's a strategy for testers to retest after changes are made. I generally use the third meaning when I talk about regression testing, a strategy to test a product after it's been changed, which to me does not imply automation. I get to use automation if I want to, and I often feel that automation is useful, but I don't automatically assume that regression testing should be automated. Okay? So I suggest that you try to be more specific or more general. Either say best practices for, of course we've already got rid of best practices, but I'm just focusing on this element, for testing changes to a project, or be more general, say for creating automated checks to, the first one is more general, for testing changes to. The second one is more specific, for creating automated checks to support regression testing. Finally, the question invalidates the questioner. Any person who asks this question should never be given the answer. It's very similar to if a child says, Mom, where's the electric saw? And I want to cut something. You probably shouldn't give the answer to that question if your child is 8 years old. I once asked my mother I think I asked her for a screwdriver or something because I wanted to take the television apart because I wanted to build a radar system, and I was 10. And I know now that I was in no position to build a radar system, but I just wanted to try. And she refused to tell me where the tools were. It's a good thing. She should not just answer that question. That question is only going to be asked by somebody who can't understand the answer. A self-invalidating question is one that would not be asked by someone who could understand the answer to that question. And is only going to be asked by someone who can't understand the answer. So when someone asks me a question that I'm convinced that the only reason they're asking it is because they don't even know anything, then I say, how about instead of asking me for the answer, we have a conversation about this. I can't give you a simple answer to this question, but I can help you. So if you really don't know anything about a subject, I want to suggest that you say, I want to learn how to XX, whatever it is. Can I talk to you about that? That would be a better way of asking that question. So here's the total cured question. I want to learn about developing automated checks to support regression testing for an agile e-commerce project. Can I talk to you about that? And the answer is, I don't have time. I'm sorry, I don't have time. Not right here as I stand on this stage. I can't do that. But here's what I don't want you to go away empty-handed. So there are 4 kinds of things that you could learn about that would help you. So you can go learn about these things. Learn about testability. Learn about change control and the importance of change control. Learn about testing versus checking to know the difference between those. Clarify if you're talking about regression checking or regression testing. And understand that you can do exploratory regression testing, and it's a powerful thing to do. People just say, oh, we don't want to have humans retest the product every time. And I say, why not? Why not? Before you say you don't want humans to retest the product every time there's a build, I want you to show me you know what a human can do and how humans are so much more powerful than machines at recognizing unanticipated problems. If you understand how humans are better, then we can talk about having machines do it instead, because at least you'll know what you're not doing. But a lot of people don't even think that a human is better than a machine. And that's just basic ignorance about testing. So I will make sure we have a conversation about that. So there's 4 things that you're going to need to learn about. When I have more time, I can have this conversation with you. All right? So I have received a new version of this question. I think this is the one isn't this the one you gave me? All right. This has more details to it. So imagine this question, but with more context. So the guy's got the BRD, based on the BRD, how to estimate the cost of total testing to the customer, what are all the factors we have to consider. So this is a whole bunch of questions. It's still got a big problem in this question. It asks for a miracle, and it's a self-invalidating question. So as soon as I see this, I say, oh, wait, we're going to have a long conversation about this. Here's the big problem that I have. The main question here has no answer. Based on BRD, there's no way, based solely on a BRD, you could ever make a credible estimate. You can't do it based on the BRD. You would have to do it based on the BRD plus a bunch of other things. I'll bet that's what you really meant, though. I bet you didn't really mean based only on the BRD. So I'm going to guess that here's what you meant to say. At the time I received the BRD, I have the BRD at this time. I don't have the product, but I have the BRD. How can I make a good estimate of the total cost of testing? Now, that doesn't mean based only on the BRD, but it does mean that maybe I can't see the product yet. Maybe I just have information about what the product's going to be. Okay, that's not a terrible question to ask. That's a reasonable question to ask. But when I saw it based on the BRD, all my alerts went off because I thought, you mean you want to calculate based on the BRD? Just look at the stuff in the BRD and find a way to estimate? I have no way to do that, and I don't believe anybody has any way to do that. In order to be credible, you've got to bring in outside contextual information. Indeed, in the question that you revised, you've given me more contextual information. But the second thing is, again, I worry that this is a self-invalidating question, because if you could understand my simple answer, then you wouldn't need to ask the question. You would already know how to do this. So I think we need to have a conversation about it. Can you help me make a test estimation? I have a BRD and I want to figure out how much testing might cost. What factors, I love these questions. These were good. Notice I didn't change them at all. What factors should I consider? Is there a way to come up with a range? Now again, I don't have time to have the whole conversation, but here are the things that we would have to go through. Estimation by analogy, testability, using buffers. Basically, I just tried to do 45 minutes about truthful test estimation, and I still think we've got a lot more we have to talk about, and we can have a conversation about this specific thing. And I love your additional data that you gave me here. This makes me feel like you're a thoughtful person, and you're going to be successful in this because you're ready to deal with details. A lot of times when I coach Indian testers, especially Indian testers, I think it has to do with the language barrier as much as anything else. It's really hard to get them to type details to me. So I'll say, describe testing, and they'll type back after a 3-minute delay, find bugs. Assure total qualityness, or something like that. And that's it. That's your whole description of testing. And I say more. And they go like, find bugs now. You know, I get sometimes it's really hard to get Indian testers to type stuff. I assume that most of that is a language barrier. But this stuff is not simple. Testing is not easy. I can't teach it to you in 3-word labels. You can't learn it in 3-word labels. You can't explain it to me in 3-word labels. So if you're going to work with a testing coach, be prepared to have some longer conversations about testing. Oh, look at this long question. Okay, this is okay. It's long and rambling. It has an incoherent premise, but we can fix it. It's going to be all right. First, let's shorten the question. Boom. I'm going to have to shorten it, make it tighter. With all the focus on automation, where and how do you draw the line between manual and automated testing? Now you deal with the second problem, which is it's incoherent because I don't recognize the difference between manual and automated. I think that's a false distinction. Because testing is so much more than output checking, and it involves all these things that we can't automate, it's better, I think, instead of talking about manual and automated, to talk about coders and testers. There are some people who are coders and some people who are not coders. They are testers and not coders. But you have coders who can test, or testers who can code. I think most of when people say automated tester, they mean a tester capable of writing their own tools. That's what they mean. I'm a manual tester means I don't write my own tools. Other people give me tools, but I don't create them myself. Okay, well, if you write your own tools, I would call you a technical tester or a coding tester, either one of those. I expect the technical tester to have the ability to design, discover, apply, and evaluate the technologies necessary to optimize or empower the test process. That's my little definition of a technical tester. And that still doesn't mean that testing is automated. It means you know how to choose your own tools, deal with your own tools, put your own tools together. And that's an important skill set. So now I'm going to reframe that. And here's my reframe. Here's a question I think is healthy to ask. With all the focus these days on automation in all phases of the software lifecycle, how do we manage our relationship with tools? That is, I think, the essence of the issue. And how do we see that relationship evolving? So I think that the key thing is credibility. We must develop our credibility so that people don't push tools on us, force us to do things that are unreasonable to do. But they won't listen to us unless we have credibility. So we've got to build credibility. This is the thing I specialize in. I am an expert at looking like an expert. That's why I wear these glasses, folks. You think that's just because I need to see? I could have worn wireframes, but they don't make me look as smart. My wife told me about that. She told me to get these glasses because she wants people to shut up and listen to me. So get these glasses and they'll be mesmerized. I don't have the best smile in the world and not the most charming guy, but I can be intimidating in my glasses. I'll do lots of things to appear credible. I earn credibility, of course, and I deserve credibility because I practice. But just because I earn it and deserve it doesn't mean people will give it to me. So I also do tricks. I do psychological tricks so that you will listen to me. One of the things I do is I speak confidently. I use a complicated vocabulary. I speak without hesitation. My tone goes down at the end of each sentence. I do the same kinds of things that Donald Trump does to make people think that he's good. And it works for him. So man, if you actually have any talent or intelligence, it would be really good for you. Because he's a complete loser and it works for him. I can't believe that guy. Sure hope he doesn't become president or you're all going to die. You know, he's crazy. Save us from Donald Trump. But, oh, sorry, the camera's going. Hey, Donald, I hope you're not president by now when you see this. Because you will totally hold it against me. I know you. So, we've got to study our craft. We've got to study the tools that are useful to us. How we manage our relationship with tools is we establish our dominance over the tools. It's just like being with a dog. You learn how to control your dog, how to keep your dog on a leash. Tools are our friends, but we must know their limitations, know their power, know their limitations, and we must be able to list those limitations, and we must make sure that the people we work for leave it to our judgment how to use tools instead of having them read a magazine article and then say, this is what Google does, this is what Facebook does, so this is what you have to do too. Because whatever Google and Facebook does is right because they have $1 billion or whatever it is, $100 billion, and you don't. So credibility is the key to flying over those conversations. The final question comes from Paramila, one of the famous testers of India, a woman I have great respect for. She's one of the, especially obviously, one of the great female testers of India, and that's important as she's a good role model. And I have great respect for her. She sent in this question: can you describe unskilled scripted testing? What, in your opinion, are the key differences between skilled scripted testing and unskilled scripted testing? This is an excellent question. It doesn't need any curing. It's all ready to go right now. I'm proud of her, since she is my student, that she has submitted a question that I didn't have to embarrassingly correct in front of all of you. So if you see Paramila, tell her she did good. All right, that's the question. I don't know why it wandered into Question Hospital, but there you go. Here's my answer. It's a good question. It's an interesting question. Unskilled scripted testing means people who follow scripts or people who are otherwise constrained in their testing and that they don't have the ability to interpret or exploit those scripts or constraints. Now, when I say constrained in your testing, what I mean is that you can be a scripted tester even if you aren't following any script in any conscious way. For instance, if you only know how to do boundary testing, then it doesn't matter if I say, be creative, do anything you want. Because you'll always say, thanks, James, I think I'll do boundary testing today. You are a scripted tester, you are a robot. You are incapable of making choices because you don't know what choices exist. If you told me that I could have any food I want in the whole universe, what would I choose? Of course I'm just going to choose the foods I already know about. I don't know enough about food to make choices about what I should be eating. I haven't studied it. So there's lots of ways for people to be scripted. Here's one way that people can be scripted, and they won't even realize it. Give them an automation framework to use to describe their tests. And you'll find that if a test idea they have is hard to code in that particular system, then they'll go, oh, maybe I won't write that automated check. Maybe I'll automate a different check that's easier to automate. I guess that's what I'll do. That's a scripted tester right then. They're not making the choices based on what's the best thing for testing. They're making the choices based on what's the easiest thing that my tool will let me do. And that's a kind of scripting. So to overcome scripting means to learn about the choices that are available and to learn how to make those choices in an intelligent way, which is the process of becoming a professional. So yeah, there's such a thing as unskilled scripted testing. And if you have an unskilled scripted tester who is substantially scripted and constrained in their work, be careful, because being unskilled and scripted means that you won't really understand the testing work that you did. You'll say, I typed these things, I don't know if that's good or bad. You can't really take responsibility for your work unless you have sufficient skill. So in that situation, don't let that person work unsupervised, or if they work unsupervised, don't rely upon the work that they did. That's my answer to that. And I've already mentioned this before, so there you go. That's question hospital. I don't know how much time I have left. Am I out of time now? Maybe there's time for one question that someone might be brave enough to ask live, and I'll question hospital it in real time. That would be fun for me. I'm not sure if I know how to do that, so I'm going to try it.
Can we have a mic there?
Or I can just repeat the question, whatever it is.
What are the key reasons that bugs go into production?
What is the what?
What are the reasons that bugs would fall into production and then slip out of us?
What are the reasons that bugs slip by us and get into production?
That's right.
Okay. All right. What
question is
are the
yours.
reasons that bugs slip by us and get into production? Okay. This is a very broad question, but I don't see anything particularly dangerous or malformed about this question. That's just a pretty good job. That is an interesting question. I don't get this question very much. Hey, all right. You ask a question like that to me, and I think, you're a thoughtful person. I'll invest my time in helping you. And that's the value of thinking out a question. But it is a very broad and general question. So, because there's lots of different contexts. In order to answer the question, we would have to specify a fair amount about the context. For instance, if you are talking about a continuous deployment type of situation, then you're talking about something where there are layers of checks and maybe code reviews and pairing and that sort of thing. And in order for something to slip by us, it has to elude all of our nets of automated checks. And which lets me, every time that happens, it lets me say, see, automated checking, it catches some things, it misses lots of other things, it's not deep testing, maybe we should do some more deep testing. So I'm excited whenever that happens because I can point at it and say, I told you so, people who believe in total automation. But what if it wasn't a total automation situation? What if it was a situation where we carefully tested, maybe in deep and thoughtful ways, and yet the bug still got by us? Well, one of the reasons why that happens is because we are unable to simulate in our little world the conditions that exist in the real world. And you all know this if you work with mobile testing, right? You test with a few mobile devices, and it's like, it looks pretty good, and then you ship it, and it turns out a whole bunch of people in China who have some kind of old Android version or something can't use your product, and you had no idea that these people existed, but there apparently are 100,000 of them, and you really would like their money. And now you have to work with that. So we frequently have trouble imagining the real world in all of its messy variety, and that's another reason we miss. Here's another reason why we miss it. I'm going to ground every one of these in an example from my real life. Okay, imagine that you test something for 9 months, and neither you nor any of your beta testers see a bug that every single other customer ever immediately sees as soon as they use the software. But nobody on the project sees it. How can that happen? That has happened to me twice in my history. Both times it was a special file that was in the product early on and accidentally got dropped from the build partway through the project. But everyone already had the file. So it was like, we can't get smallpox. We're immune to smallpox. So we think everything's fine because we have the magic file. And then as soon as we send it out to everybody else, they don't have the magic file and they try to run the product and it says, missing DLL, can't find such and such DLL, and it crashes. And of course our customers go, did you even try to test this? It doesn't work at all. So that's a kind of bug that we protect ourselves from by doing total clean machine testing and having very good change control and making sure that our files are curated very well. Another example is we had bad internationalization and we didn't find out about it until we shipped the product and our French affiliate said, we can't localize this. And we realized we hadn't thought at all about internationalization because all the people who thought about internationalization are in France. And they speak French. They don't even talk to us. Then there was a time that the biggest bug that we shipped in Borland C++ 4.0, the biggest bug that caused the most complaints, that caused us the most embarrassment, was the license agreement, which had been changed without our knowledge by the legal department. And we didn't look at it because we thought, it's just the legal guys that do that. It's not even us. We didn't realize that we have a certain expertise. We know what our customers think about legal stuff. So we could have noticed a change and gone, whoa, our customers are going to hate that. They won't be able to tolerate that. We didn't even think to look at it. So those are some examples. Usually it's a failure of imagination. It's a failure of our model. That's the biggest thing that I'm worried about. The second thing that causes it is a failure of discipline. We know how to find that bug. We could have found that bug. We just didn't run the process that we know that we should run. It fell apart at the last minute because we were rushed, and the guy who runs it couldn't do 3 things at once, and he thought, it'll be okay. So those are some of my answers to your question, but as far as Question Hospital goes, that's a nice, interesting question that can build a lot of good conversation from. Thank you for asking it. Well, that was cool. That was fun. I really hope someone would ask me a question that I would be able to really tear into, though. But I guess everyone's afraid to ask a question, maybe after all I've treated so poorly the other question. No, I hope you notice something. I hope you notice that what I try to do with every question is to preserve the spirit of that question, to honor the spirit in which the question was asked. Even though I might criticize your question, I'm not trying to criticize you as a person seeking information. And try never to attack somebody for trying to learn. And I never want to do that or be seen to do that. But sometimes it's tough when the question comes and you just go like, why do I keep getting questions like this? I wish it would stop. Yes?
So for estimations, generally what happens that do we have to wait for dev estimations to give the Q estimations, or it should be like yeah. So my question is, so do we have to wait for QA estimations that when they are going to complete the
Do you have to wait for development estimation?
Yeah, absolutely.
In order to do a test estimation?
Correct.
What do you think the answer is to that? What do you think I'm going to say? Guess.
No.
That's what you think I'm going to say? Why do you think the answer is no?
Because that happens with me.
Because that happens because you don't wait for development estimations?
I'm confused. I don't know.
What do you mean when you say development estimation?
Maybe the first build that they will provide us test.
That doesn't sound like an estimation, that sounds like a build. Are you saying you're going to wait for the first build? Or are you saying you're going to wait for a development estimation about the project?
Let's say in a waterfall world kind of thing, they will complete the development of the particular product.
They will complete what?
Development of the product. And
Okay,
then-
sure, but that's not what you're talking about.
Yes.
So hold on. Are you saying that do we have to wait for them to develop the product before we do an estimation?
Correct.
Oh, I thought you said, do we wait for a development estimation? That's what I thought you said, a development estimation. See, this is one reason why it's important to go back and forth with a questioner sometimes, because especially when English is not your first language, and don't get me wrong, I speak one language, and I'm not anything like you geniuses that speak 5 languages. You know, you all speak more languages than me, but this is the language that I'm pretty good at, and that's the only one I can communicate in. So I'm listening to you in English. I know you're struggling, but what you said at first was wait for a development estimation. So I thought you meant that the developers are going to estimate how their project is going to go. Which I would say, of course you have to wait for that, because that's a huge factor. If they say, we think it's going to take 2 years to develop it, and you didn't wait for that estimation, so you just said, oh, I think it's at least a week to test, and they say it's 2 years to develop, you're going to say, can I have my test estimation back? No, too late. You already did it. You promised. So, of course, I'm going to wait for the development to say, this is what we think is going to happen. If they say, development has no idea what they're going to do, but we want you to say how long it's going to take to test it, I'll go, no, I'm not going to do that. That's funny, though, that you would ask. That's a good joke. Sometimes people say yes. It's kind of like you can go up to someone and say, give me all of your passwords. And some people might say, okay, and give you all the passwords. But I'm not going to do that. But you're saying, do we wait until we have a version of the product before we make an estimation? That's a much smarter question than I thought you were asking. Thank you for amending it. It can be quite difficult to make an estimation when you haven't seen the product. I certainly don't make a very detailed or precise estimation when I haven't seen the product, because often when you're just given a rumor of the product, it turns out the real thing is way different from what they told you it was going to be. It turns from a elephant into a mouse. It completely changes its interfaces. They decide they're in a different industry, and now it's a massive online gaming system when it was going to be a medical device. And then, you still have that same estimate. So what I would say, this is why I say do a first order estimate. If you don't show me the product, I'm going to give you a very kind of approximate general estimate, and I'm going to list my assumptions. But I tell people, look, as soon as I see the product, I'm going to be able to amend this estimate, and I'll have a much better idea.
So previously we have a BRD context.
Yeah.
Where we say that based on BRD, can we provide the Q estimation or not? So my question here is, let's development have also BRD and QA team have also BRD.
That's right. So that's why you can ask development how many and exactly which bugs do they estimate they're going to put into the product. And if they say, we can't estimate that, then you go, well, then the answer is easy. I can't estimate how long it's going to take me to find all your bugs. You don't even know what bugs you're putting in? How come there's always time to put bugs in the product, but they never have time to develop all the things they want to develop, but they never say, we didn't have time to put all the bugs in the product, so we're going to have to ship a product that's bug-free. They never say that. So I can only say, based on BRDs, you can only say a few things. There's very little I can say. I can say, look, there seems to be 3 big parts of this product. It looks like it does this kind of thing. Here's what I can say based on a BRD. I can say, from what I can tell about this product, we are going to, this is a data-intensive product, and we're going to have to develop comprehensive test data. And there's a complicated algorithm on the inside of it that looks like it might be difficult to test. We're going to have to develop a way of testing that. I can come up with some broad test activities that I know I'm going to have to do. I can say there's some special equipment we're going to need to get, and let's start getting that equipment now. There's some broad things I can say, but detailed estimates about, well, exactly how many weeks or how many days is that going to test, I'm not going to be able to do that based on the BRD. I might be able to do it based on a similar project. So what you're probably doing is you're reading the BRD and going, that reminds me of this product that we did. And then you're thinking, how long did it take to do that? And then you're probably saying, if that's going to be about the same, then we can say that's about a 3-month job. And that's what I can know right now. But I always tell them, when I finally see the product, I'm going to make a new estimate.
Thank you.
That's why Agile is such a good thing, or can be such a good thing, because the whole idea is to focus on working code and to not delay seeing stuff. Let's see stuff quickly, and that way a lot of these problems aren't so terrible.
Hi James. Actually my question is that can you really give a complete knowledge transfer? Like supposingly a tester is moving out to another project and he wants to hand over that testing to another
Can you do a knowledge transfer?
complete knowledge transfer?
Okay. So the first hospital thing I need to do, this has got to be the last question because of time, but the first hospital-y type of thing I have to do here is to point out that there are 2 kinds of knowledge that we must treat differently: explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge transfer works totally differently from explicit knowledge transfer. Explicit knowledge transfer can be done by giving somebody a document. You just say, here's the data, here's my files. Tacit knowledge is knowledge that's unspoken inside of you or inside of a group, because a group has a certain way of working and they've never codified it, but they all just kind of do it. And to transfer that means you have to have shared experiences, or you have to try to put some of it into words, which can be very difficult. Usually it's shared experiences. So I would say, come on to the project, or I'll come on your project for a few days and shadow you, or for a few weeks and shadow you. So here's my final little story. My brother worked at LexisNexis. He had a test team. LexisNexis management announced to my brother that he was outsourcing the whole thing to India. I told him, just quit. He said, no, James, I shall do my best, for that is my morality. So even though they've told me that they're going to fire my whole team and transfer it to this company in India that doesn't know anything about testing apparently, I must do my best. So I shall do my best. Okay, John, I wouldn't do that. I would just walk out of there. He said, no, it's what we shall do. So what he decided to do, he doesn't talk like that, but that was his attitude. Stuck up little brother. So what he did is he talked to this team from India. And the first thing they asked for is, where are your test cases? And he said, we don't use test cases. And they went, we don't know what to do, which is what we thought they would do. So he said, come to America for a few weeks, sit with our testers, sit with me, you'll see how we test. So that's what he did. And then he decided to take a class on how to work with Indian testers. He said there was one thing in the class that was absolutely vital, that he learned to do, that he did. And he found out what he should do, and it's worked beautifully, is he brought a map of India to work, and then he had everyone put a pin in it. Where are you from? Tell me about your family. What kinds of foods are in that place? What's your favorite sport? Oh, cricket, okay. And he learned about cricket because he wanted to talk to them about cricket, and he learned about the different parts of India. And he said that this started breaking down the walls, and he stopped seeing these people as strangely accented robots and started seeing them as these people with families and hopes and dreams and all this stuff. And suddenly they were communicating and talking easily. And that was the big thing that needed to happen. Then he started showing them, here's how we test. Let's test together. This is how we take notes. This is how we record what we do. Because we do. He has lots of documentation of different kinds, just not test cases. Because we don't highly formalize the testing, not in their group. They didn't formalize the testing. But they were always ready to report on the testing they did. They maintained test coverage outlines. They were able to do test reporting. So the knowledge transfer happened person to person through actually testing together, and that's how it's the best way to transfer tacit knowledge over time. It's not particularly difficult to do, but here's a shortcut that you might be forced to use instead that's not bad. And that is, instead of writing down all this test stuff, consider making a video. A 10-minute video. Just go up to a tester with your smartphone and say, show me your testing. How do you test? Tell me all the things you do. You have 10 minutes. And the tester will go, well, I do this, and I go here, and I activate this, and I use this tool, and sometimes I do this, but we got to watch this because... And testers find it very easy to talk to a camera and do a little YouTube thing, a series of little 10-minute, 5-minute videos. It's much easier to do that than to say, write all your stuff down about what you do. Like, hurry up. Oh, and by the way, keep doing the work too. Do all the work and write it all down. You're going to find out that if you force people to write things down, they'll do a terrible job of writing them down. They'll leave out lots of things. But with video, it captures lots of rich things. And people can watch these short videos and get a lot out of it. So if you really can't do the working together thing, then maybe you can do the video thing. And some of that tacit knowledge will start to rub off on other people.
James, related to the same thing, I remember of mental models. So the person who's actually giving some tacit experiences or sharing the experiences with the other tester, wouldn't it create some kind of a rigidity to see few things in testing?
Wouldn't it create a lot of what?
A rigidity to see other part of the scene. Like supposingly for me, a mental model would be different, while the tester would think in some different way.
Do you think, are you saying that mental models create rigidity?
It may, I mean that's the question.
Mental models absolutely create rigidity. They do two things for us. They lock us into a tunnel vision, and they make it possible for us to see anything at all. So mental models are a vital, fundamental part of testing that are also dangerous and must be used with care, but you have no choice. You have to use mental models. You always test based on your understanding. So we need to gain the skills to escape bad ideas and find better ideas. That's what my RST class is all about. And we'll talk about that.